I would say that you've got to start listening to your team. And the best way to do that is to create a safe space that the team can talk about the challenges in. And that is something that we see. These are the aha moments that lead need to hear from the team. But because of teamitis and people not being willing to talk about them, that leader has to create that safe space.
Hey, Rob, I'm super excited to have you join me for this episode of Coffee with Closers.
Hey, Samir, it's so good to be here. Thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, most certainly. You have an amazing story. You were a programmer of computers. Now you became a programmer of people. So not a lot of people may not know that journey and the history behind that. Could you share with our audience a little bit about your journey of becoming a coach of people, training people to be A players?
Yeah, I certainly can. Look, in the 90s, we're going back a long way now, which dates me really. But I started out my journey in a large consulting company, and I won't say which one, given what I'm about to say afterwards. But I coded and I tested in technology for this organization and their clients, and I had a good time doing it. But one day, the partner came in and into the office, and he said, "Oh, I need someone to go and talk to the client about the work that we're doing, the technology that we're working on for them, and get them to sign off on the content." And he looked around the room and he said, "The person who's normally here is not here. I'll choose you," and pointed to me and said, "I want you to go and talk to them." And I'd never done that before. Anyway, I went and did that. And at the end of the day, the office was empty. I went home and came back in the next day. And the partner came back in the room, which was very rare. That was 2 days in a row. And he said, "I need to see you in my office." And I thought, "Oh no, what have I done wrong?" So I went to his office, and as we got to the office, he said, "Close the door." And I thought, I'm going to be fired and my mother's going to kill me. I sat down and he said, "I don't know what you did and how you did it, but they loved how you spoke to them about the work that you're doing and the team is doing. And they want to see more of you. So if it's okay with you, we're going to take you away from being behind the screen and we're going to put you in front of clients more often." Now, that was the first thing that helped me realize that whilst technology is very important, actually the people side of business is really important too. And helping people navigate through changes and understanding what those changes are is going to make a big difference. And then the second part of that was we had career coaches at this organization. And my career coach would meet with me once a year. And in that once a year period, we'd have dinner or something like that. And they would say, "This is how your rating is going to be." They didn't coach me for the rest of the year. They didn't help me understand what I could do differently. They just gave me a rating that fit on a bell curve. And I thought to myself, look, if I'm in this position and I'm trying to get coached and be supported, then surely I should get that to help me right now. And in fact, I shouldn't wait to once a year. It should be much more frequently than that. But actually, that's what it was. And I thought there's got to be something in there in helping people grow and develop that's very important, very impactful for individuals. And then the third thing that really made it for me was that organizations are going through change all the time. And it's inherent on the team to make those changes happen. But there are individual skills with individual people. And if we could just bring those skills together and help one another and own success together, coach one another, then we could be much more successful. So it was a culmination of those things that made me think, hey, I don't want to be in technology directly anymore in the coding and testing. Instead, I really want to be thinking about how I can help people make their work easier, make their organizations more successful, make their lives more joyful, and actually get some of that time back, rebalance this work-life balance paradigm that people are so fixated on, too much on one side of that, typically the work one. So it was all of those things, Samuel, to be honest, that culminated together and got me to shift my career from where I was.
So obviously you had some innate skill that enabled you to go to that presentation meeting and kill it. So what were some of the things that you identified about your skills more than just being able to program computers?
I think the first thing was I met them where they were, right? When I was talking to people, I wasn't talking about technology. I was helping them understand the change that was necessary from their side, from an organization, a business point of view. So I started by saying, look, you're trying to do A, B, and C here, rather than here's all this code, can you sign it off? And when I started talking about A, B, and C, I explained how the approach and how we would do it. And in fact, how we had done it, and asked them to review the process on screen with me, the technology side of it. And when they saw that and they knew what it was attached to, the why piece, Simon Sinek talks about start with why all the time, then that really helped them. That really helped them. And that was really the lever for me. How do you help people? Meet them where they are. Don't start from my part, where I am. Let them start where they are and let me meet them there to help them on their own journey.
So obviously today you're in the business of training people, building high performance team. And I'm sure everybody that comes to you always, all the leaders want high performance team. So what's the secret to building high performance team?
But here's the thing. The coaching that we do, because we don't call it training, because it's a different experience, but the
Mm-hmm.
coaching that we do is all about helping every individual be the best that they can be within the team, and then helping the team be the best it can be as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so we see those as different entities. Let me explain what I mean by that. By the way, all of the work that we do is business focused, it's outcomes focused. In fact, what we're trying to do is unleash potential so that the folks in the teams can disrupt the market and succeed exponentially. But let me go into a little bit of detail about the individual performer first, because this is what has always been seen as the answer. How do you help individuals be the best that they can be? Actually, I've already mentioned one of those, and that's the coaching piece. Think about the individual performer in any team, right? You might be a great performer, an average performer, or an underperformer. Whatever it
Mm-hmm.
is, that's what you are. But let's take an example. If you underperform by 1% every day for a year, and we've done the numbers on this, then what happens is at the end of the year, you're creating a diminishing return and you're achieving maybe 2% of what you could have achieved beforehand. Now, if on the other hand, you do 1% more and you do that every year, it compounds up. And at the end of that year, what happens is you get to 37 times the value. Right? 37 times the value. Not 37 times the value of the 2%, but 37 times the value of if you just performed that role.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a multitude of difference here in individual performance. And look, every team has probably a standard bell curve, more or less, right? It's got some A players, it's got some maybe AD player, maybe a couple of C's and some B's. And what happens is for the individuals, they're all treated the same. And more than that, everyone is given the opportunity to grow, but not in the areas that they need to. And
Mm-hmm.
they don't own success together. So the first challenge I see in teams is that the individual capability is very important, but are we really thinking about how we can help everyone unleash their full potential? Then the second piece is how do those individuals, all of those people in the team, how do they perform as individual players?
Mm-hmm.
And each person has a different level, right? Some A's, some B's, some C's, as we've talked about. But then that plays into the third piece, because in the second piece, I want everyone to own success together. But success is not a joint venture. Success is an individual game in most teams. Most teams have never had a conversation around that.
Mm-hmm.
The third piece then is if I walked into a room and I said to a bunch of leaders, how is your team doing? They'd probably say, oh, they're doing okay, right? They're doing
Mm-hmm.
okay. Because they average out. They take the A player, they take the B player, they take the C players, they average them out and go, oh, they're a B player kind of group. The A drops down, the C goes up, they average out. But that's not how team performance really is. Team performance should be measured like this: person A multiplied by person B multiplied by person C multiplied by person D, and so on. And in doing
Mm-hmm.
that, what happens is you actually get to the nub of team performance. How do people work individually? One aspect. Second, how does everyone work individually? Second aspect. Third aspect is how do they work together? Do they work in what we would call a cohesive team manner? Do they work cohesively together? Or do we have people doing some stuff on their own and then they come together when they have to have a meeting, which they can't stand? They don't really want to have the meeting. They just want to go back so they can do the work. And the statistics on meetings are terrible. Most people spend far too much time in pointless meetings. Yeah. But how do those people actually work well together, multiply them together? And then what you find is if any one of those people in the team, whether it's the leader or a team member, if they're not being candid and not sharing information, if they're not co-creating and helping each other win, if they're not crossing the finish line together, if they're not coaching one another for growth, if they're not working well while remote, what that means is that they're degrading the whole team's performance. And so what it looks like on the outside, what we all understand to be the case now is that Jimmy is not doing so well. Okay, so it's a Jimmy problem, but it's not a Jimmy problem. It's a whole team problem because it drags down the value of the whole team. We're stopping ourselves from unleashing that true potential, which means we can't disrupt the market, which means we're not going to succeed exponentially. And that's what's critical about this and not well understood in the world today.
Yeah. Obviously, you've probably heard the phrase, I'm sure, 100 times, like hire slow, fire fast. And a lot of times, the fire fast is only because you brought a bunch of people, you expected everybody to be at the A level, and then you end up obviously with a bunch of B's and C's and D's, and you give up hope on those D's and C's and B's, and then you want to keep only the A players. Is there hope in those low performers? Have you seen them actually rise up to the occasion and becoming A players?
Yes, absolutely. I think everybody has within them the ability to be an A player. Whether they
Mhm.
are or not now, that's what it is. That's just a fact, right? Or it'll be a judgment of a fact. But there is potential in everyone. And actually, we go back to where we started this conversation. And that was, why did you make that transition from technology to the people side and effective teaming? I did that because I wanted to help unleash true potential. And I did that by meeting people where they are. So let's say you've got a C player, right, in a team. Why is that person a C player? Right? What happens is we get to the point, and most leaders do this, and if we're honest, many colleagues of that C player would do this as well. Let's just write them off. But
Mhm.
that person's got a great deal of value, and
Mhm.
there's a reason why they're not sharing. There's a reason why they're not contributing. There's a reason why they're not developing themselves. So we've got to find out why. And a lot of the time, this is what we do. This is what we do. We find out what that critical capstone, that linchpin piece is for
Mhm.
each individual, but we also do it for the team. So, for example, you may find that this person who's not performing well, they've been burnt in the past when they've been speaking up about specific challenges within the team. What happens there? It creates a belief that they shouldn't do that in the future. So they
Mhm.
sit back and they just let things happen. Even though they could probably do something about it, they just let things happen. So that creates a challenge. And that means that the team then can't be successful. Now we have to address that with them. We have to meet them where they are and address it with them. But also, then it's inherent, and it's traditionally seen as inherent on the leader, that the leader has to create psychologically safe space. But honestly, whilst that's true, it's actually inherent on everyone in the team to create that.
Mhm.
Because I've seen some teams where there's been a disruptive force in the team who's not the leader, but that disruptive force limits everybody else's capability from coming through and delivering the true value, the exponential value that's really possible.
Have you seen the opposite of it's true where you had an A player was brought down to a B or C or D grade because of the rest of the team isn't performing at that higher level?
Yes, I have. And what typically happens is that A player would be thinking about leaving. And often they would say, "This isn't the right environment for me,"
Mm-hmm.
or "I feel like I'm being stymied and I can't get where I want to go." Now, look, you never want an A player to leave your team, right? As long
Mm-hmm.
as everything else equal, you want them to stay. But then you've got to really think about, how do you help that individual be the best that they can be? And if you're the leader or the team member, then it's inherent on everyone to actually say, "Look, we've got a challenge within this team. Look, in fact, it's so funny. Let me
Mm-hmm.
tell you this story. We got to a place where we found that in teams across the world, it isn't region specific, it's not culture specific, people are inherently afraid or concerned about talking about the performance of the team. I'm not talking about anyone in the team, I'm just talking about the performance of the team. And so I said, look, we need a word. We need to make this socially acceptable. How do we make it socially acceptable to
Mm-hmm.
talk about the underperformance of a team? Or in some cases, the overperformance, but
Mm-hmm.
more often than not, the underperformance of the team. So we came up with this term called Teamitis. It's like bronchitis when you start to feel ill. But let's have a conversation. And what it says is, hey, something like this. Hey, I think that there's a challenge within our team. I'd like to mention, I think we've got some teamitis going on. And it should, once introduced properly, it signals to the team, hey, pause for a second, because there's an opportunity for us to be better together and to
Mm-hmm.
drive greater value, maybe even do so more easily. And if we can do that, then what will happen is we can get there faster, and we may even go further, and we can have more personal time back instead of spending more time in the evenings and the weekends. So we came up with this term. And when we're seeing it in use now, what we're finding is individuals saying, it's almost like a safe word. Right? I'm in the team meetings going off rails, and I can say, hey, we've got a case of teamitis here. And suddenly it's possible to talk about how the team is or is not working well together. And that fundamentally shifts it, and it makes it socially acceptable to do.
Yeah. That's a very good way to bring everybody back to, hey, it's not going the way it's supposed to go. We got to address this problem. But obviously, there's got to be some tools and techniques that you could provide for leaders to start identifying early on the symptoms of a dysfunctional team. I'm sure there's probably assessment or whatnot, but how do you empower leaders? Because obviously, like you said, even though it doesn't always fall on the leader, it's the entire team's responsibility to make sure that they encourage everybody to rise up to the higher level. But how do you empower the leaders to be able to start identifying who is the team member that's really holding us back?
I'd sit slightly differently, but let me start with the first part of the question. Part is, look, Yes, it is on everybody, the leader and the team members. And we have a team diagnostic that we call the team cohesion quotient or assessment. And that's available on our website. I'm sure you'll share the link. And it's free, right? So we believe that our research should be available and free for everyone to enjoy so that they can accelerate their value and their outcomes and really deliver to their full potential. So all of our research is free. What we do with that, and we have about 50% leaders filling it in and 50% team members filling it in, believe it or not. And the great thing about it is that it gives an instant report that says in these 12 areas, this is how your team is performing overall. Now, we do the more sophisticated version of that with teams when we're working with them, which actually hones in much more directly on specific areas to target. And that helps guide the sessions that we build, all custom built. But the key for us is let's start with the diagnostics. It helps understand how the team is feeling about, or the leader is feeling about the team. Now, the second part is, and this is why I said I see this slightly differently. I don't think it should be a witch hunt. It shouldn't be about which person is underperforming in the team. Instead, I take it up a level. And although we do training for individuals, we do training for groups as well. Most of the work we do is coaching teams together, as I said earlier. So let's bring it up to the team level. Because in a way, it doesn't matter whether Simon or Sally are performing well or underperforming within the team. Actually, what matters is how is the team performing? And more importantly, instead of the witch hunt, what can we do about it together? So the work that we do isn't about identifying this person or that person not putting their weight or not delivering on time, but instead instilling a set of strategies and mindsets and nomenclature and tools and practices around how the team can work well together. And now I get it. So if let's imagine that we did that work and 6 months on, someone is still underperforming, then I think during that intervening 6 months, and at that point, we should be talking to people along the way and holding them accountable to the new ways of working. But the starting point should never be, hey, you're underperforming, we're going to find out who you are. Instead, it's a team discussion. Although we do coaching between each of our sessions with the clients, and it's every member of the team if they wish. So we're trying to help the individual as well and hold them accountable to the change while also helping the team collectively together.
Yeah. What if the team has different roles, right? If everybody's a salesperson, it's a lot different, right? Like they all have the same KPIs that you're keeping them accountable to. You have him measuring, right? He's our top performer. He surpasses the quota every month. But what if it's a team with a distributed workforce that has so many different types of things that they're working on? So no two person have the same exact output that they're responsible for. How do you then measure who's really actually growing or improving?
I think there's two aspects to that as well. First thing you mentioned is different roles, and the second thing is the geography of it, right? Under the different roles piece, then look, the average team that we work with is a CEO's direct reports or a leadership team. And so by virtue of their structure, one person's looking at sales or revenue, one person's CIO, one person's the CHRO, another person is the chief legal counsel, and so on and so forth. So they all have their own individual functional areas. And so they have that expertise and it's very deep in that space. But do they know how to work together as a team? That's the question. So you could have an underperforming CHRO. We've got to deal with that. But also the other thing that we've got to deal with, because 99.99% of teams have never had a conversation about this. In fact, it's probably 99.9999999 recurring teams have never had a conversation about it. How do we work together? What are the norms? So that's the piece that's missing. So even if a role is underperforming, how the team is performing, we've got to see that separately as well. We've got to tackle that as a specific set of opportunities as well. So that's the first part. And then the second part is the geography. This is really interesting. So pre-pandemic, okay, most people were going to an office. The average organization, most people were going to an office, probably 5 days a week. Then pandemic hit and everybody had to stop, more or less, apart from first responders and critical workers. And thank you to them for everything they did. But in these offices, suddenly everything had to change and we had to go and work at home. I know organizations where hundreds and hundreds of people who used to go to call centers suddenly had to work at home. Massive transformation. And it all happened. And I wrote an article on this. It all happened so quickly and everyone managed to do it really well. It was a really well executed change. Transformation like that is very hard to achieve, but there was a big driver for that. Now, here we are, and there's a load of return to office mandates. The resilience is a bit low in most people. They're saying, I don't really want to go back. I like looking after my kids, dogs, whatever it might be. Or I just like being at home and be able to do my washing in the day, or I hate that commute. Now, there's something in there about all of those things, and we have to trust our workers, and hopefully organizations do. But the other thing is, being in the same room together is not the same as being on a Zoom or Teams or other call, nor is it the same as being spread out across the world. But we've got to find a way. Now, often organizations come to us because one of the 12 differentiators of high performing teams is the geography piece and how people work together, whether it's in person, remote, and hybrid. Now, we've got to find a way to be so intentional to help every individual feel like they're part of that team, whether they're in that space or not. And often the difference between high performing teams and poor performing teams, especially when it comes to remote work, is whether people are intentional about it. We call that the critical inflection point. When you're thinking about something to do with teaming, and this is a great example, there's some remote workers, hybrid workers, how are we treating them? Let me give you a really good example of this. It's very practical. Let's imagine that you're working remotely and there's 15 other people in a conference room in an office. How do you feel?
If it's all in one room, it's probably like too much going on, right? There's 15 people, just no, I'm sure it's going to be chaos in some sense.
Chaos there, right? But how do you feel about it?
When I am actually part of that 15, there's a level of energy that comes from being around people because
Which you miss, right?
yes, there's definitely of that. Yeah.
And also, if you're sitting at the end of a teleconference line, you probably feel like a second-class citizen because most of the time people have forgotten you're there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there'll be Jeff at the end of the table who's always talking, and there'll be someone going out to the bathroom and somebody coming in and somebody wanting to change the topic. And at the same time, you're sitting there thinking, I can hardly hear, and I certainly can't see what they're looking at. And you don't feel good about it. So that's one of the areas where we've got to be really intentional. How do we make sure that the people who are remote have a first class, world class experience? And so those are the kinds of things that we tackle in the meetings so that everyone can have a great experience and actually feel connected. And then, by the way, given that the return to office mandates are coming thick and fast right now, do you know what I hate? Look, I don't mind whether people are in the office or not. That's not my call. I'm going to help you whether you're in person or you're remote or hybrid, whatever it is, that's fine. But what I really don't like, and that goes back to intentionality again, what I really don't like is when an office team is told, come back to the office, you all need to be here 5 days a week. Amazon is going 5 days a week back into the office from January, right? Now, I'm okay with that if that's what they want to do. But here's what I don't like. Everybody goes back to the office and then they do exactly what they would have done if they'd have been sitting at home. So I know people around the world who have gone to the office, they spend an hour and a half getting to the office, and then they literally sit there on the same video conferences that they would have been on at home all day, and then they leave the office. They might at lunchtime happen to walk past someone who's in an office and wave at them through the glass, but then they leave at the end of the day, and then they travel an hour and a half back. What value is that? See, we're a global workforce now. So even if we're in a local office, it's very likely that our suppliers or third parties or partners are not all there as well. So we've got to be, if we're going to bring everybody back, let's be intentional and make it count.
Have you done any research at all? Obviously, I think you're saying that there's some value in proximity and location of your employees in terms of their performance, but have you done any studies to actually warrant that you should force people to be in an office to get the highest output?
I mean, I think the clue is in the title, right? When we've looked at this, forcing people to go somewhere to do something, what does that build? Typically, it builds resentment. And if we're looking for people to be their best, to do their best, to help one another, to be a cohesive team, resentment is not a great place to start. And what tends to happen is the discretionary effort gets lost, right? So if there's that deadline, that thing that you've got to do on a Thursday night, but you're going to go and see your friend or partner, or you're going to go to a show or a bar, whatever it was, and you think, normally I would get that done, but I feel really aggrieved and resentful that I've had to be pushed back to the office. So that can wait till tomorrow. That discretionary effort, it just drops away. It really does drop away because people don't like it. So look, but I also think they especially don't like it. It's exponentially disliked if they're told to go back, but nothing's different. So some organizations are changing their layouts, or they're saying, come back, but this many times a week. But when you do come back, we're going to do something intentional every Tuesday that looks like this. so that you can get more value from it. Because that being proximate to people, the social chemistry, you feel it. If you're in a room, doing what I do as a coach and a facilitator, if I am in a room and I get a sense of whether we're going in the right direction, or maybe people are a little bit fed up with something, or we haven't covered, you get a sense for that. You can feel it in the room. But it's hard. You can see body language, but you have to mind read that. But it's harder online to see and to feel that, to really feel it.
Yeah. People also are easily distracted when they're home, they're in their room, they got a cell phone buzzing and then their mailman ringing a bell. There's so much going on that it's very hard to keep them engaged when they're remote.
Look, you're absolutely right. I think the biggest challenge there is the multitasking. So I'd say upwards of 70% of people multitask when they're on meetings, when they're remote. I go through a lot of airports, and because of that, I see a lot of people with their Zoom meetings or Teams meetings and so on. And whilst they've got their meeting open and they're talking and they're nodding and they've got terrible backgrounds on to hide the fact of what's going on, they've got a drink and they've got their phone open and they're typing or they're writing other emails. I can see it all the time, and that's in public. So imagine what would happen in the privacy of people's homes, right?
So
Now,
true.
look, I don't think that we should be measuring success by whether someone's putting the washing on at lunchtime or answering the door. I don't think, because in an office environment, you have more interruptions than that anyway, typically. But what I do think, because we've got to trust our people, what I do think is that if we can trust our people, if we can get to a place where we let people live a little and do some of those things, they feel better about it. And it's almost like, we trust you, we know you're going to do a great job, and we only care about the outcomes. Make sure the how of what you do is good as well. That's really what we do in teaming. But get it done, fantastic. And then if you want to do this or have a break, then fantastic, do that. Look, even if you go broader than that, some organizations, some countries are saying maybe it should be a 4-day work week. That's tried a lot in Europe. And some organizations are going all in on that. That has other implications, but that's another way of looking at it. I don't think that's going to be as popular in the US as it is in Europe.
I wouldn't be opposed to that at all. I think that would be a great idea to have a 4-hour work week.
4 day, not 4 hour.
Yeah, 4-day work week. I'm thinking about the book from.
Yeah, you are, Paris. Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, you mentioned earlier about the A players, and they never like to stay in a team where they're not actually being uplifted. And what can leaders do to retain those A players? And what are some best practices that you would recommend to make sure that they are well taken care of, that they
And,
stay long?
honestly, look, let's start with honest conversations. If between the person who's the overachiever, the A player, let's get that person to be honest about how they feel about the team to the leader. But also, let's put the onus on the leader to say, hey, now you know this, you've got to do something about it. And I would say that leaders can be a little bit reluctant to bring in a team coach because oftentimes they think that they should be doing it themselves, but that's not really their primary role nor skill set. But secondly, they sometimes feel like it's going to cost this much or it's going to take up this time. Think about the money that's being wasted. You've got, and the risk. So you've got a team that's not performing as well as it could do. That's costing money over a lot of people. You've got the risk of someone leaving. That's costing money if they decide to leave. And you know how much it costs to bring on somebody new and get them up to speed and all those things. That's terribly difficult. That's terribly difficult. It costs a lot of money to do that. And so my advice is, if you feel like, and try to take the diagnostic, but if you feel like that your team is not performing as well as it could, or someone's coming to you with concerns, listen to them and do something about it. Because the last time that you'll be able to do something about it is the time where they tell you, because the next thing they might do is quit. And at that point, they've already mentally left the organization. So you've got to do something about it as soon as possible to help all the team play and stay. So it's about playing and staying. And perhaps some of the people who are not performing as well, I don't write them off. I'll give you an example. I worked with a senior director of a technology company. This person, I was invited in by a board member, and this person was not doing well. They were on a performance improvement plan. They probably had about a month to show that they could work differently. Otherwise, they would be out of the organization. These are difficult times for people. This was some time ago, but it's a difficult time for this individual. First conversation I had with this person, who I'll call Simon, just for the sake of this conversation. Simon said to me, I don't know why we're having this conversation. You've already decided that I'm not going to be here. And I'm like, I've not decided anything. I've been invited in to help you be successful. And I said, and I know you may not trust that, but I want you to be successful. In fact, I want you to be promoted in 18 months. And he was like, but I'm on a performance improvement plan. And I said, but Simon, that's up to you. That's up to you. And what we did over the course of 6 months, and then it was 9 months, was work on how Simon showed up, what Simon could do differently, what this feedback was, and opened the opportunity for Simon to hear the feedback for the first time, internalize it, and choose different ways of working. It goes back to different strategies, different mindsets, different tools. And actually, Simon got promoted about 12 months after I met Simon and started working with him. Now, that's the kind of thing. So you take someone who's underperforming, that was probably an E-level performer, right? Close to fail. You take someone like that and you can make them an A player, but you've got to sow the seeds and water the ground a bit, and you've got to help people. You've got to meet them where they are, and you've got to care about them. And actually, their team had already written them off. Just the board member hadn't, but the team had written them off. And as this person kept growing and growing, the team was saying to me and other people and to Simon, wow, what are you doing? How are you achieving this? But that's really what coaching at the individual and at the team level can do. And that massive turnaround is indicative of the work that we do all the time. But by the way, we don't only work with leaders and teams and team members who are underperforming. Otherwise, people would say, don't come in here. We also look at the other end of the spectrum, teams that are doing really well. But how do they get from doing really A+ as a collective to 10x that? That's an area that we focus in as well.
Yeah, that's an amazing story of transformation, because when you give a person a second chance, and they're going to be much more grateful for that opportunity and will be much more loyal to that organization, because they've, like, that organization invested in that individual. So tell us a little bit about what's different about you. Obviously, there's the Dale Carnegie program, there's the Franklin Covey, like all those are different training programs that are designed to improve leadership in an organization.
Yeah.
How is your approach in your program different?
I think the way that we're different is, first of all, we care about business outcomes, and we achieve those by caring about people. So business outcomes are the goal by caring about people. We're not going to bring anybody into a room and do a trust fall. We've never done a trust fall. We're not going to start doing trust falls. But what we are going to do is we're going to start working on real business challenges, real situations that the team needs to work on. That's the key starting point for us and everything we do. And everything we do is bespoke. So when you talk to us about the challenges in your team as a leader, we're going to figure out, how do we make it better for the team? How do we make it easier for the leader? And how do we drive success for everybody? How do we accelerate careers exponentially? So we start there, and then we build up the experience from there. And we start by having diagnostic conversations and finding out how we can help every member of the team. So it's not here's a diagnostic, here's a survey, here's our standard content. It's actually bespoke built for the team and the challenges that the team is facing. That's the key challenge. And now we do have our own diagnostics, proprietary, and that helps us think about how the team works together. And then we use that as a launch point to identify other interventions and also other diagnostics that we want to bring into this. But they are all focused on the team, very practical, results outcome focused. And look, it's not a program in the abstract as a consequence of that. And our work is mindset based, it's behavioral, which some of those that you mentioned are as well, but it's also neuroscience based, and it's very focused on the opportunity to be successful as a team together, right? That's really what this is all about. And that's where we're different, right? It's not individual coaching only. There's part of that. And there are parts of those other things, like conflict comes up, situational leadership comes up, all those things come up. But it's about how you put the blocks together for the specific challenges, and using our research. We have a research collective that studies every day how to help teams achieve and individuals achieve their full potential in the workplaces that they're in, and bring it together to drive the greatest value in a really practical way.
It's awesome. Obviously, you've mentioned that assessment that's available for people and some research that are available. Where can people find those things, and how can they find more about your services?
Yeah, great question. Thank you. So all of our content is available on redefinewinning.com. That's redefinewinning.com. And it's /diagnostic for the diagnostic tool. And you'll also find in the top menu our thought leadership panel, which includes all of our articles, which you can both read and download for free. We don't even ask for an email.
Awesome. And then what kind of programs do you have available for people from a training and coaching standpoint for leadership and people to build, team building?
Yeah, so we do our team experiences, and some of those we call team breaking, by way of example. Right? You can't build a team on a shaky foundation. So this team building stuff that people are doing normally is just, it's good, but it's interesting and it's engaging, but it's entertainment. So we actually take the team back down to the bare bones and build you up to be successful. That's one aspect of it. Then we also run workshops around things like collaborative problem solving and team decision making, mitigating team bias. We look at how the opportunity for teams to come together and think about the future of their organization, future focused leadership. That's another great one. We have experiences for entrepreneurs. And in fact, all of our work, you could say, is applicable to anyone, whether you're a 2-person organization as an entrepreneur starting in a front room, all the way through to Fortune 10. We have a wide range of content and experiences. And of course, remember that even if it's not listed directly on the website, everything we do is bespoke anyway, so we can tailor it to the specific situation that your viewers may find themselves in.
So obviously, speak to that business leader or the business owner, right? Who's dealing with some dysfunctions within his organization. And what is one practical advice that you can give that leader to actually start to bring his team together and bring a cohesive A-player team?
I would say that you've got to start listening to your team. And the best way to do that is to create a safe space that the team can talk about the challenges in. And that is something that we see. These are the aha moments that leaders need to hear from the team. But because of teamitis and people not being willing to talk about them, that leader has to create that safe space. And that's what we do. That's the magic that we bring into organizations. If they're in that space now and they're thinking, how do I even create that safe space? Then they should reach out to us for a free consultation, or they can take our diagnostic online, which has got hints and tips in it. But look, we're here to help everyone unleash their true potential. So we'd love to be of service.
No, certainly. Awesome, Rob. I certainly appreciate this conversation and the wisdom you share with my audience. Thank you so much for joining me today.
It's been an absolute pleasure. It's great to see you again. I'm looking forward to the next time.
This episode of Coffee with Closers is brought to you by One IMS, a leading digital marketing agency helping businesses win new customers. To request a free marketing ROI audit, please visit oneims.com. If you enjoyed this video, please share it. To make sure you never miss an episode, please subscribe.